everybody, Zach here from Primrose Productions Music. Today I want to talk to you about 3 ways my history as a bassist has influenced my production and my mixing ability. And yeah, it's probably going to be a pretty short video. Before we jump into it, if you are not subscribed already, hit that subscribe button. It would really help me out. And I encourage you guys to stay around to the end of the video, because at the end of the video, I'm going to give you something that you're really going to like. So, let's get right into it. The first thing I learned as a bassist that has helped me in the audio production world is really straightforward. I'm sure most of you have thought of this, and especially if you're a bassist or a drummer, you know the bass and the drums have to be tight. They need to be super close together. They need to be hitting everything at the same time. Now, this is true in every genre, but especially in like metal, you need them to be extra tight, specifically the kick drum and the bass. They need to be hitting at the exact same times. And of course, you want the natural performance to be as close together as you can get it. But in lieu of that, then if you have to go into editing, like for metal especially, you're going to need to hyper edit things so that the drums and bass are exactly together. And for other genres, you know, pop, rock, it's not as big a deal. They still need to be tight, but it's a little looser. There's a little more room for leeway because, you know, there's not quite as many hits as you're getting in like fast metal. So not that big a deal there, but you still want them to be as tight as you can get them, just because if you haven't noticed, the bass and the drums are what everybody moves to. That's why people dance, that's why people bop their head, that's why people fucking mosh. Like, that's what is making people move. That's what's giving the song the energy, is the bass and the drums. So if those two things are not tight together, then your song's gonna fall apart. The second thing that I learned as a bassist that helps me with audio production is to serve the song. A lot of bassists don't know how to do this. A lot of bassists, either they want to show off as much as the guitar player, or they're doing absolutely bare minimum, just root notes kind of thing, maybe some octaves and whatever. But that's not, neither of those is wrong necessarily, but they're not right all the time. You need to know when to do what as a bassist. You need to know, you know, this part, you know, it's pretty busy and other things. Maybe I'll sit back, you know, do some roots. Maybe, you know, just like keep it simple. And then, oh, this part, you know, it's a little more open on the guitar, so I can like fill some of the space with the bass and things like that. And as a bassist myself, the way I personally play bass, I'm constantly thinking about how I can help the song. The thing about being the bassist is you don't have the spotlight, which is great because you don't really tend to develop an ego quite as much as the other musicians. I mean, it's certainly possible, but a good bassist knows that they're not there to be the star. They're there to support the other musicians and make them sound as good as they possibly can. And that can also be applied to production. You know, you may be one of the producers or engineers, whatever, that has a specific way that they do things every single time. And, you know, you may have a set of go-to guitar tones, and, you know, you get those tones every time, whatever, bass tones, drum tones, you use the same drum samples sometimes, if you're using samples, and it's not a one-size-fits-all thing. Like, what's applicable to this band is not necessarily going to be applicable to the next band. And you need to realize that as a producer. You need to listen to the band, and you need to do what is best for their music. Okay, you're not trying to warp them into what you want them to do. You need to do what's best for them. And this is a reason that pre-production is so important. You know, you need to get in a room with the band before you start recording and listen to their tracks and take notes and be like, you know, what songs do you guys equate this to? Like, when we go to produce, what songs that are from bands you like do you think this could sound like? And, you know, listen to those tracks and take all those things into account so that when you go in, you know what to do to make them the best version of themselves that they can possibly be. To take their sound to the next level while maintaining their individuality. You don't want to be churning out fucking carbon copies of everything. You need to actually take the time and make sure that they're getting what's best for them. And that's something that if you're a good bassist, you've learned a long time ago. You are there to help the rest of the band. You're there to help the other musicians You are not there to, take over and be 100% in charge and, like my way or the highway kind of mindset. You're just there to help. And the third thing that I learned as a bassist that has helped me in the production world is the low mids are the most important part of your track when you're mixing and setting tones and all that. That is where the energy of the track comes from. Sure, subs are important, highs are important, the whole mid-range is important, but the low mids is where the energy comes from. And especially you don't have this problem, again, as much in rock and pop and other stuff because there's usually, less notes going. It's usually more longer sustained things, so you can usually weave things together better. But for things like metal, when there's a lot of quick notes from a lot of instruments with a lot of gain, you need to really focus on that low mid-range because when you get low-tuned guitars and you also have the bass going there, you end up with the guitars and the bass fighting for frequency range. In my live set, as the bassist for my bands, I am always trying to tweak my amp settings. I usually take a little bit of the mid-range out of the bass so that the mid-range of the guitar can shine through more, and that seems to come across well in our live shows, even more so if we have, a competent sound guy working at the venue that we're playing at that day. But yeah, it's something I try to do in my live set. But it's even more important in production. You need to hardcore separate the low end of the bass and the guitars. And in what I generally do to accomplish this, is if you've seen any of my processing bass videos or recording bass videos, then you know that I do this. You want to split the signal of the bass. So you have two versions of the bass, and you're basically gonna have the low end, which you normally keep clean even in metal, and you're gonna generally do a low pass at about 200 hertz, maybe as high as 250 depending on the song. And then you're going to have another track, which if you need distortion, that's the track you're going to put the distortion on. And if you don't, you're still going to do this anyway, and you're going to high pass it. So everything is being cut off below between 350 and 450 hertz, depending. Again, it depends on the song. It's not always the same. And different tunings, you're going to end up with different results. But for the most part, you're trying to cut out between 200 and 400 hertz from the bass to leave that room for the low end of the guitars. And if you haven't tried this before, just try it. Even if you only have a single bass track and you can't, don't have the ability to reamp it or re-record it or duplicate it in any way, then just try, a simple EQ and just scoop out that whole range with a narrow Q and see how that affects it. But I guarantee you, if you're hearing a lot of muddiness in your mix, if you know that the energy should be there, but you're not feeling it the way that you think you should because everything's just washed out, take the mid-range out of the bass and the low mids out of the bass and just tighten it up there. You can also do it in drums. Sometimes you get some muddy low mids, especially from toms, low mids and toms, and occasionally the kick. You're going to have some build up there too. So you can take that out of there. Again, the low mids, if you're a guitar-based band, you mostly want the low mids between 200 and 400 being taken up by the guitars and not any of the other instruments. So that's it, guys. That's the 3 ways that my history as a bassist has influenced my audio engineering and my production. For those of you who don't know, I own a studio, obviously, in Bennington, Vermont area. So if you guys are in need of recording or mixing or anything, make sure to hit me up. You can email me, Zach Primrose at primroseproductionsmusic.com, or you can just go to my website, primroseproductionsmusic.com, fill out the quote form, and we can do it that way. Now, like I said, I promised you guys a free gift, so this is for you. If you already have music and you are ready to release it, then you need to read this guide that I'm going to give you before you release it, especially in the current climate. Everyone's still stuck inside for the most part. This guide will help you get your music to as many people as possible while still being confined to your homes. Without shows, this guide can help you grow a following as you release your music. The guide is called Your Rise to Stardom. It literally is a step-by-step guide on a music release process for you to get the most out of your release. You can check that out at primroseproductionsmusic.com/guide. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed that video, hit that like button. Leave me a comment. Let me know if there's anything that's helped your production from things you've learned from whatever instruments you play. Thank you guys again. I will see you in the next video.